Gurmeet, you have to tell me to go ahead and get started. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining in. So another very exciting session with Aile and Kelpichar. So we're just waiting for Gurmeet to say go ahead and we'll get started. Good evening.
Hi, good
All
evening.
of you to put yourself on mute. Please mute yourself. Yeah, you can use your chat engine to say anything. I think we'll get started. Thank you very much. Really sorry, we are 6 minutes late, but nothing can stop us from sharing what we have come in here today for. So I would first hand this over to Madhura to start from Aile. She'll give us a quick introduction and then we'll move on. Is that okay? Madhura, over to you.
Yes. Yes, Smita, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to this month's session under the POSH law. Myself, Madhura from Indian Lawyers Association. We are an organization energizing all the law professionals across the country. We do this by way of hosting different events, seminars, capacity building activities. We run few committees who actually do these things for us. These committees are headed by all the law professionals like all of you. We also do activities for students on their campuses and also run a legal aid committee, which gives access to people who require legal assistance at no cost. So, if any one of you is interested to come forward and join us on this mission, please get in touch with me. I'll send an email to all of you tomorrow. I hand over to Smita, who has been wonderfully navigating all these sessions for all of us for past few months. Smita, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madhura. A little bit about myself. My name, as you know, is Smita, and I run this company called Kelp HR. We have been pioneers in prevention of sexual harassment initiatives across. Uh, we've been doing a lot of work in this space, and while we were doing a lot of work in this space, we thought it is a time to give back to the society. And what best than sharing our knowledge, picking brains of some industry stalwarts, and we started reaching out to one, and there were many hands who raised their hand and said we want to contribute. And with me today I have this really eminent panel members. I hope y'all can see my screen. Can you see the panel members here?
Yeah, we can see the screen.
Okay, can you see the panel members, Madhura?
Yes, yes.
Awesome. So in that, first I would want to introduce the gentleman on the panel, Dharani Suyodhan. That's his name. He is head of legal and compliance function for PEGA in India. He leads the global corporate governance for PEGA, is a member of PEGA Indian leadership team. He comes with over 16 years of legal experience across various verticals. Okay. He's a strategic executor and has proven ability to reduce risk and impact. What really excited me is that he's an author. So he has co-authored a book. Okay. And he's somebody who is a visionary. So that's Dharani for you. The second panel member is Aparna GV. She's a passionate problem solver. She's done her PGDBA from ITM. She has total or more than 20 years of experience in HR. She has worked as an external member, or rather she sits as an external member in 15 plus organizations. She's a POSH and D&I consultant, of course, and she has dealt with various cases which are very tricky, which needed a lot of attention. We also have with us young and dynamic Kanishka Bajpai. She is the principal associate with IC Universal Legal. She's a member of the transactional practice team focusing on assisting and advising domestic and foreign clients on venture capital investment, joint ventures, private equity, and many more things, including merger and acquisitions. So I hope I have done justice to our panel members. And I would open up the discussion, and I'll stop sharing my screen with each one of you. If you could, the panel members, step in and share 1-2 liners about yourself, anything that I have missed to cover.
I think we have a very interesting topic to discuss, Smita, which is, I think it is more interesting than talking about me today. So yeah, it's been a very colorful and interesting journey last almost, yeah. So I've been into the POSH field from 2013, from the law, from the time when the act came into force. So it was a pivoting point in my career where it became, a full-time opportunity. So combined with the HR experience, it has been rich and colorful. And as you know, human nature is like that. Every single case is different. Every single case is a learning, and the journey goes on. So I'll be very happy to share. I'm very happy to be in this discussion today, to be part of this. Yeah.
Sorry, intervening. I missed a very important point. Aparna was a jury of POSH Awards that KELP-HR initiated last year. We are the pioneers in POSH Awards, so which we came up last year, and she was the jury member. The reason of bringing Aparna is to pick her brains to say where we are and where we want to be. So what is it that any jury member will look at? So yes.
Yeah.
So that is Aparna for you. Kanishka, have I missed anything from your introduction? Anything that you would want to share? So the topic is very interesting, right? Best practices in POSH. Okay, so we have Aparna, who's been a jury member. We have Kanishka, who comes from law background. Dharani, of course, comes from law background, but to top it, he comes from an organization which has been winning best workplace for women, right? So what is it that makes it a best workplace for women? Of course, prevention of sexual harassment should be topping it. So here we have the whole set of people who can really help each and every organization here to understand, the lawyers who are online, the external members who are online, who are listening to the conversation, can really pick up some important aspects that they can go back and share with their clients, with their team members, right? Dharani, anything that you would want to add here?
I think you've given a wonderful introduction, Smita, and thanks for all you do. I think Aparna mentioned this as well. POSH as such, I don't see it as just a statutory compliance. I think it's much more than that. It is a change of mindset. It is about how we want to be in our lives. What kind of corporate character does a company aim to have? It's not, just because there's a statute we want to do it is where half the companies or more than that are. I think we're on the right path where probably with organizations like yours and with people like Aparna and ILA and all these awareness programs, we should go to a level where every organization does it because they want to do it. It's not because somebody mandates you to do it.
So beautifully said, Dharani. It should be the DNA of each and every person. So nicely said. Thank you so much. So with that, I have a question for our lawyer, Kanishka. So one is statute, of course, as Dharani said, okay, and other is best practice. So from the context of SH, what according to you are the best practices, Kanishka?
Actually, yeah, taking forward what just Dharani said, that it's actually change of the mindset, and it's legislation which is directly linked to your socio-economic changes, because it's just not about protection but also making sure that women earn enough to take care of themselves. And I think the one of the best practices I feel is prevention, because as we know that prevention is better than cure. The legislation talks about if sexual harassment happens, then what could be done and what is the redressal mechanism and all. But I believe it is directly linked with the mental health of your employees as well, right? And it's just not about the victim, it's also, or the complainant, it's also about the respondent as well. I mean, taking a small example, there was this ad which I saw in relation to prevention of protection of children against sexual offenses. So man goes in the lift a little boy comes in the lift and the man is very, very uncomfortable with that. The kid comes out of the lift and the man is relieved. And the message comes, if you feel something like this, please call this helpline. So my point is, one of the practices that an organization can do is have collaborative steps where not just the complainant or the person suffering sexual harassment, but somebody who's going through mental problems or feel that might do something wrong, the help should be given to both of them and not just focused on the fact that once something has happened and only then you invent the wheel and you take care of it. So in my opinion, that is one. And the other is from the prohibition perspective. I know the law says the prevention, prohibition, and redressal are the three words which are actually mentioned in the heading of the statute. So when we talk about prohibition, a very simple thing can be done. The moment a person becomes an employee of your company, put it in the employment agreement when that person is signing that, the company has zero tolerance policy in respect of sexual harassment, and we have an elaborate policy. And if at all you breach, then there are consequences, and you accept it. Because the moment you sign on the dotted lines and you mention it there, I mean, we see that, spitting in public or smoking in public is injurious to health. The choice will always be with the other person. But the moment you put that sign, you make that person agree and accept the fact that you are responsible for your consequences and you're accepting it in writing from day one. I think that also creates a level of prohibition. Coming to the redressal aspect, I think one thing that is very important, and we can go beyond the statute, is, of course, the constitution of IC and how it has to work. Everything is mentioned. But that trust factor can be established by the employer or the organization, where not just by merely putting the number and displaying the names of the IC members is enough. Because both the complainant and the respondent have to have faith in that justice system. The same way we go to a court and we expect that it will be fair and just, in the same manner, I believe that establishment of trust should be there. And I guess as a practice and as a policy, in addition to sanitizing the employees, that bridge between the IC member and the employees should be gapped in some way or the other by establishing the credibility. So
very beautifully said, Kanishka. But coming from a lawyer, gives me ahs and ahas, because I remember an instance when I was sitting on a case, and the complaint was not directly from somebody who has visited the place. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was saying no, but she's connected. She should be. The complaint should be taken. So the lawyer on the group was saying, where is it written? Where is it written? Okay. So, and he kept pushing me back, saying, show me where it is written. I won't accept it till I see.
I would have counter-asked, show me where it is not written. Where it is not written that you cannot take the complaint, because at the end of the day, it will also be a company policy matter as well. I mean, it will become a statutory thing, later. But because taking a small example, right, gender neutral sexual harassment policy, where it is written, it's not written, but the companies, they still adopt gender neutral policies, right? So at again, furthering it with that, because it's a social legislation, we should, of course, I mean, we need to make sure that, and the objective needs to be kept in mind, that it is to protect the women, and sadly only women as of now, but still all the women at workplace. So I think the question should be, where it is not written that you can't do it at company level or organization level. And I guess that's the distinction we can make between when we say that company can actually go beyond the statute.
Thank you, Kanishka. Coming to Aparna, I want to know that, many a times, or rather 90% of our times, IC would move only when there is a complaint.
Correct.
So do you think that is what it is practice? Is there a way to break that myth?
Okay, so it is a painful truth that many companies in many situations IC committees are waiting for a complaint to come and then start acting. So that is something that I would really advocate against, because if we want to establish IC as a parallel function available to help, available to help, the only way to do it is to be proactive. The IC has two other hats to wear, like Kanishka was just saying. It's prevention and prohibition and then redressal. Unfortunately, many of the committees today are talking only about, they're only acting on the redressal responsibility, while I would definitely recommend that they start working on prevention and prohibition. That, according to me, it's like gardening. The external member can play a big role in this. You start sowing that seed right from when you do the IC training, saying that you have three different functions. The best way to not reach the redressal way is to do prevention and prohibition. So it's like what you tell a HR person: please keep your ears firmly to the ground. You have the responsibility to actually look out and create a safe and secure work environment, a zero harassment workplace. You don't have to wait till you get a case. You have to look for signals. You have to look for opportunities. I mean, I wouldn't say opportunities, but you have to look for those signals which could boomerang, which could become a sexual harassment case tomorrow. For example, repeated personal comments about the same person will almost always land up being a sexual harassment complaint. If the senior leaders, if the IC is on the lookout, if they are aware, then we can quickly plan a sensitization session. You can put up a poster, you can send up a message in an open house. Many things can be done, but that awareness has to be there, has to be built over a period of time in the IC's mind, so that they take up that responsibility. It makes a huge difference if the IC can take this up seriously and not wait for a complaint.
Awesome. So Dharani, what is those typical thing that IC in PEGA does differently? Okay, do they restrict themselves to redressal, or if they do for prevention prohibition, okay, or more?
Yeah, I would like to state that, but before that, not just PEGA, I have been associated with anything to do with POSH right from 2013. Various organizations across Hyderabad, Secunderabad, Delhi, Gujarat as well, trained more than hundreds actually, thousands of people on what POSH means. I believe that there's I agree with what Kanishka said about the object and intent of the act. I think that needs to be kept in mind. When we talk about constitution, we need to understand why the constitution was made. When we talk about any act, we need to understand why this act was made. And training, awareness are the biggest tools that we have under POSH. Redressal comes last. It's a firefighting tool. We have to do it. There is no other go. When a complaint comes, that is when the statute kicks in and says you have to do this within so and so days, within so. But that is a redressal thing. But by then the act is already committed, right? Somebody is already suffering. We have the unique ability to stop something bad from happening. I think if we realize that and take it one step forward, and a lot of companies don't do this, they need to start having physical training programs. COVID, I can understand, but even before that, I have hardly seen people who actually conduct training programs for people on POSH, which is not coordinated by graphics on the screen, or some videos go on, somebody comes and speaks for 10 minutes and it's over. No, where all I have worked and where all I've been invited for, I've done sessions for 1.5 hours to 2 hours to let people know what it means, to make them understand exactly what they need to do and how they need to do. And it's not just men that need to be trained. It is also women. It's also the awareness is not just about, okay, there's an act, whenever you have a trouble you can go to the IC. These are things that most people know about. But what constitutes sexual harassment? What defines sexual harassment? Why do we need to talk about it so much? I think the first thing that I found is, as soon as you say sexual harassment, even if before you complete the sentence, half the people are looking here and there, don't want to maintain eye contact, they don't want to talk about it, they don't even want to mention sexual at all. That is the kind of environment we are living in, and we should first acknowledge that. If we want to talk about it, we should first acknowledge the fact that it is still a taboo. If I'm talking about it in the office with an open door and I'm saying sexual harassment loudly, everybody will come running and start talking, what the hell is happening? Right? We still live in that. So I think we need to first educate people that it is part and parcel of what we are doing in the corporate world. What that is actually mean, what are the frameworks in which it should work. And organizations like Pega have been consistently in the top when it comes to working environment for women and all. It's because they do things not because they have to. Pega does things because they want to. It's a Pega way of life. And not just Pega, there are several organizations who do that because they want to do it, not because an act mandates it. And they go a step beyond it. For example, a lot of companies conduct these training programs for the new hires, and probably they do one session, they call everybody in the organization to attend, or two sessions, divide them, and they do it, and it's okay. But there are organizations like Pega who do it with groups of 30 to 40. Ensure that it goes through separate session for the leadership, separate session for the contractors, separate session for the housekeeping staff in the local dialect. Let everybody know about what it means. At the same time, you don't need to rock the boat. You don't need to let people know that, oh my God, there's so much wrong happening in the world that we need to change it now. That's not the case. More than 95% of the people working in the corporate world are very, very good at what they do. They have a good character. They don't indulge in sexual harassment. But we need to make everybody aware of it because of that 5%. And the other thing which Aparna was mentioning about is being approachable. The key role of IC is not just to sit and receive complaints. If you notice the jurisprudence that has developed over the past, and even coming back from the Vishakha case, and there are cases even before that which have been discussed as to what sexual harassment means in the industry and how it is taken into effect. I think the IC needs to come across. That's why the complaints part has been removed, right? As most of you are aware, internal complaints committee is now internal committee. Why is that so? Because you are an internal committee to counsel, to make people aware of what is happening, to let people know that you are approachable. Anybody on the floor should be able to walk into anybody or any office of any of these members in the IC and mention what the issue is, what they feel is happening should not be happening, either directly or indirectly. The other thing is, I think organizations should also link up their internal redressal mechanism with IC. That is, if they have a whistleblower policy, a non-retaliation policy, they should mention it when you're talking about IC, when you're talking about POSH. When you're talking about sexual harassment, mentioning the whistleblower protection and the non-retaliation policy is very, very important. And also, if you can link it up with your hotline, most companies have something called as a hotline, where you can pick up the phone and register anything that you feel is wrong that is happening in the company, not just with sexual harassment, anything wrong about the company. What the IC needs to do is highlight it and integrate it with your IC and let them know that even if you have a sexual harassment complaint, and if you don't feel comfortable reaching to us for any case, any reason, then you can pick up the phone and raise a ticket with the hotline, and trust us, it will go through only to us through a third party agency. You give them the mechanism, the details about how this thing works, and then the confidence builds, in the organization as a whole. On the floor, people will come and then approach and start talking about it. Then it'll be better.
So very beautifully said, Dharani, and there are loads of questions coming in for you.
Of course.
But Aparna and I were in a discussion, and she was mentioning, Smita, it's like ruffling the feather if we are talking too much about it. And you also said that, right? That people think, oh my God, there is some major issue happening. That's why they're talking so much about sexual harassment. So what is it that we can demyth that myth?
So you're glad you asked me that question, Smita. So there was this organization, I won't name that organization. I was very closely involved with them to build up their, POSH thing. I like it. There's a personal reason I'm so closely connected with POSH, because one of my close friends was affected adversely. And because of that, she no longer works in the corporate industry at all. It's a terrible thing that should not have happened at all and shouldn't happen with anybody else. And I thought, that's because there is no awareness. People don't do it. So there's this organization which I was very closely associated with, and they started getting their senior leaders to talk about it, saying, does that mean we're all, molesters? Do you guys think that, we're all coming from such backgrounds? What do you think? Why are you doing this so much? I think the simple answer, Smita, is we need to use something called as the sixth sense. I keep asking everybody when I do this training, you know what the sixth sense is? Anybody? Open for anybody to answer, including the panel, except Aparna Ralegaonkar, because she works with me and she knows the answer. Yeah. The sixth sense is nothing but the common sense. People should use that. For example, the act says you need to have posters in the organization. That doesn't mean you have 20 posters on each floor. That doesn't mean you have 20 posters on each floor. Just need to have one poster on the notice board, probably one in the cafeteria. That is the difference between overdoing it. You put yourself in the spot of the person reading it and as an outsider and see, okay, is this too much? Should I have a red poster with a black background, or should I just keep it along with something which is already there? I would go with something which is already there. Don't make it, a taboo. Don't make it like a, exclamatory mark kind of a statement. Make it an important thing. Let it be in bold, but let it not be in red. They say it very easy, right? Keep it in bold, but don't make it in red and put an exclamatory mark, because then it becomes a topic of, why are we doing this? Is it because something going wrong? Same thing with the trainings. You need to mention that the organization is sexual harassment complaint free for a certain amount of period, or let them know that it is only a, very minuscule percentage of people who are affected by it. Give the, proper statistics about what is happening to the board and the leaders, so that they understand that, we are doing this not because we are bad, but because we want to continue the good that we are doing. We want to be there. We have set ourselves very high standards, and we want to continue the way we want to do.
Thank you, Dharani. Thank you very much for that one. And Aparna, what do you think on the same lines, that when people say, "Oh my God, you all are talking too much. Don't talk too much."
Right.
Now there are no complaints. It's hunky dory. If we start talking about it, people, will
Right.
they'll start reporting even if they don't have complaints. So, what do you think about this?
So in the last 6 years, what I would say is, actually when we started off in 2014, I have got complaints like, it started with completely with zero awareness. Like if there is immediately after performance appraisal sessions, there'll be a spurt of complaints, from there to the minute I say there's a sexual harassment complaint, the respondents have asked me, I did not even touch her. How can you call it sexual harassment? So from there to what I'm seeing now, we have come a long way. Whether we like it or not, I feel okay. One thing is, many progressive organizations have gone in and done tons of awareness. We do hundreds of sessions of personal training every month. So one is trainings, and there are many organizations who have started doing month-on-month training. And whether you like it or not, my personal opinion, I may be right or wrong, but my personal opinion, the Me Too movement actually helped, because it kind of took that topic to, it made it it became a household topic suddenly, because all your stars, the people who you put on a pedestal, and you were you were worshipping literally all this year, suddenly you see them being either sexually harassed or being on the other side. So it kind of suddenly became a household topic. Some part of a little bit of the taboo has gone away, taken away. It can happen to anyone. That is a feeling that I'm getting now when I do trainings. People, I see the nod of the head when they look at you, and they come and talk to you about a friend, and they come and ask you, should I go and what can I do about this? They come and ask you for ideas. So people are slowly opening up. One is definitely because of the trainings that are happening, and the demystifying the whole topic. See, it is still a social stigma to come up and give a sexual harassment complaint. Either if your parents, then they will say, okay, sit at home, it's time to get married, you don't have to go to work. If you're married, then you're hesitant to go talk to your spouse about it, because you don't know how you will be looked at. So that hesitation is still there. That will continue to be there in our society for a few more years. But I definitely see a positive change because of all the awareness sessions that are happening, and the awareness that Me Too brought in. So the resistance has come a little bit. I see positive movements. At least now people don't tell me that, I did not even touch her. How can you call it sexual harassment? That is one. And the ICs have to play a big role in this. While, I agree with Dharani that it should not, hit on somebody's face, and we should not scare people away saying, in the beginning, 2014, 15, I have heard, even senior people, very senior people at director level have told me, then I was actually thinking of filling this position with a woman. Now I'm thinking twice. So from
Very
there,
true, very true,
from,
Aparna.
yes,
Yeah.
from there, people have moved. At least they don't tell you in your face. They're hesitant. They know they should not say it. They cannot have a bias.
That's a very good point, Aparna. So what the companies in Europe and US have done when these acts have come there slightly before us, and if you study the jurisprudence, what they've actively done is work on a diversity and inclusive program along with this. So we have one at Pega. Most multinational corporations do have that. So in the diversity and inclusion program, what they do is they try to, I think one of you, Kanishka or Aparna, was mentioning about it, the pay divide and the, gender gap that exists in the organization in general. A healthy organization is one which has a very, very neutral gender approach towards, and it starts from the time of recruitment. There are organizations like us, most organizations who are, very conscious about it, don't even ask people their age or what they're paid or, what the background is, because there's something called as unconscious bias. What Aparna was mentioning comes from there. Oh my God, if I recruit a woman, probably I'll have, problems with IC, with POSH, with maternity. Why should I do that? That's an unconscious bias. And even women leaders who are recruiting team members have that, not just men. And we should break that unconscious bias, and where we should start it ourselves. People who are there in this group should have more women members. I am proud to say 90% of my team is all women, and it's more the women, more power they have in the organization, and I'm very clear about it. More decision making power they have in the organization, more friendlier the organization becomes towards women, and happier place for the women.
So in the sessions, just in the companies where I'm external member, and wherever we're doing trainings, after once the basic statutory requirements are met, we move on, and the next level of maturity comes as you mature. Then we start doing sessions on unconscious gender bias. There are companies who do that. Apart, posters is almost like passive. We have moved beyond that, and we have moved on to stage plays, theaters. Theater is being used to send across subtle messages. Then there is this is one thing that happens, what you just said, the independent platform to voice their opinions, not just the hotline. I know of an organization which was one of the finalists in the last year award function. They have an independent hotline, which they have not an independent hotline, it's an independent platform where employees can come and voice anything with regard to sexual harassment and even misconduct things. So this really helped the organization to move forward with not just maybe moving on to suo motu cognizance. So it's not just the IC which can take into consideration, it is also the HR department which can step in, because it falls under misconduct rules of the organization as well. Because maybe I will in turn, I'm sure Smita will also pick this up, but sometimes the IC's hands are tied. If you don't have a complainant, for example, there was a Me Too complaint that we had a couple of months back, a very, very senior executive who was involved in the case, and the complaint came during an exit interview. But we did not have, the victim was not ready to give a complaint, but we have phone recordings, we have exit interview recording, but we do not have a written complaint. IC's hands were tied. Who becomes who becomes the complainant? Do we leave it there? Because the organization's future and the organization's culture and a safe work environment they advocate, management is advocating, is at stake. But what do we do? IC's hands are tied.
Aparna, I would want Kanishka to add there from a legal perspective that suo motu complaints, right?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Because we saw during Me Too, most of them were anonymous. Most of them were on social media platform. There's a famous case of Priya Ramani versus MJ Akbar again, which was on a social media platform. So as an IC, okay, where they always throw it on our face saying it's not your jurisdiction, right? So how do we, from ensuring that from legal perspective, we are on the right side and we are doing the right thing?
When it comes to suo motu matters, and not just at like at private level, but even at at state level. And when I say state, I mean the judiciary, the executive, and all of those things. Because in addition to Priya Ramani, there was also a sexual harassment allegations against the ex-CJI of India, right? So, and there also, suo motu the matter was taken by the court, where CJI himself was involved. But the point, and I gave it a thought that whether suo motu actually makes sense, and if it makes sense, then to what extent? And in my personal opinion, I feel it's a double-edged sword. Why is it a double-edged sword? Because, for example, as Aparna ma'am was giving the example that a senior guy was involved, we have all the evidence, but still we can't do anything about it, right? Because the complainant is not ready to come. Having said that, there could be a flip side as well. I mean, just being a devil's advocate here, that if the IC has a power to take suo motu matters, and where we know that right now the constitution of IC includes employees of the company, and there could be a question of conflict of interest, etc., right? It may not be I mean, it all, and again, taking forward that point that Mr. Dharani said, that at the end of the day, it comes to the intent of the organization. If the intent of the organization is good, I am happy to give that suo motu power, in the sense that to the IC. But again, it may not be malicious. That whole question of fair, that whole question of whether it's right or wrong, because that example where you have a clear evidence in your face, it's a black and white answer.
Right.
But by making it,
you're right, Kanishka. I just wanted to say what
Huh.
generally practically can happen, and from a legal governance point of view, what you can do is there is something called as a code of conduct for every company apart from the IC and all that.
correct.
Generally, when there is any borderline case, what I do and what I would recommend everybody to do is see if this violates the code of conduct, and it absolutely does. There is no two ways about it. If I have to just read it based on the prima facie points which Aparna just mentioned, I think it is there. So if you look at code of conduct, there is always a redressal mechanism for code of conduct as well, where the HR head, the legal head, the managing director, or there are some people in the company from across the globe, multinational, so on and so forth, and that disciplinary panel takes action. Either way, having a person who's committed something like that with evidence is totally not acceptable. One way or the other, that person shouldn't be with the organization.
I agree with that. The only point I feel that, and I think that's where even the law also says that by virtue of committing sexual harassment, you can also treat it as a ground of misconduct under your company guidelines. Service rules that ways. So just to take it further as to what the Nisa was saying, was a simple point that as a statutory right, I think giving suo motu could be
definitely with you, Kanishka. That's why I said IC doesn't have the capability to handle it. It should be the actual HR head who takes it up, involves the legal head and the head of that business and that organization. Then they sit as a panel, work out what it is, see what it is, and they take disciplinary action, because you cannot have somebody like that going through the organization scot-free. I think we've come a long way, as Aparna was mentioning. 2013-14, if something like this happened, we used to have sad faces, probably not eat a meal on that day, and discuss with our spouse and go back to bed late. But right now, that's not the case. We need to find solutions. We need to pluck out these people from the cabins or whatever it is, and make it public. You cannot have them in the office.
Dharani, I want to add something here. Okay, there are times I sit on various panels as an external member. Okay, for some reason, there is also one legal person who's an internal person from the organization. And somehow I get loggerheads with that person all the time, because I am always thrown, the POSH Act is thrown on my face saying that where is it, what is it? Now, I remember an instance where the workplace definition was not very clear.
Yeah.
Okay. But according to me, a person has been harassed. A woman has been harassed. Workplace definition may be a question mark. And according to me, I thought at least the initial investigation should have been done. But the legal person did not allow me to do it. And the problem is, because I'm the only one external member and others are all internal, there was 4 vis-a-vis 1.
No. The basic rule, Smita, is not to have the company lawyer on the IC because it defeats the purpose. Now, I am not there on the IC. My team members, nobody will be there on the IC. We'll be there to support them in terms of interpretation, in terms of training, but that's it. Because I am a company lawyer, I will have to speak on behalf of the company. How can I speak on behalf of the employee too? Conflict of interest, right? Classic case.
And it's an awesome revelation, because now I'm going to use this.
The company's lawyer should not be there. You can have Kanishka as part of the committee of another company, but you cannot have Kanishka part of the same company that she is working, because it is a conflict of interest.
Yeah, it's a fantastic point, because I have faced this in the past as well. One thing I have, we've insisted in the committees that I've been part of is at least not to, have, I don't know, it's a revelation. It's a good point to have, that it's a conflict of interest.
I would go one step further, like Jayanti was mentioning in the chat. I literally fought with every managing director in the past 10 plus, 8 to 9 years, even before that, when Vishaka guidelines were also there, I was fighting it, just to ensure the HR doesn't get involved.
That is true.
All the HRs don't like me, because I ensure that they're not part of ICC, nor do they own the process. What happens if they own the process is they start telling you what to do.
Not only that, there needs
and they do this this remote
control,
controlling everything, and you're hardly left with any kind of leg room to even put your legs properly. You can't even stretch your legs. I mean, somebody who's a junior member in the team wouldn't even open their mouth.
Not only that, can I also add a point there? You are also seen as a part of management the minute you do that.
Of course.
Right? IC will not be seen as a parallel function the minute you have your HR head as the head of. Unless there is no choice, it's extreme pushback. That is the only time when I have said, we've agreed to an HR head being there. Otherwise, we've always pushed.
You were asking a question, Smita. What is we asked the person to go rather than take any legal action. So. Some Smita Tandon.
Yes. Hi, Dharani. So, you were talking about the code of conduct. You can take action under code of conduct. But what generally is the practice is that we ask the person to go to save on his reputation, or to have an impact on his future career possibilities, rather than take a strict action and, terminate him under code of conduct or such things. What is your advice on this?
My advice would be what Kanishka has already mentioned, but I'll elaborate a little bit. You need to include in your employee agreement, not just the sexual harassment. It's generally there in most employee agreements. But what you need to mention is, if there is any gross violation of any of the policies of the organization, then the termination is immediate, without convenience, without any cause, and without reason. You can ask that person to leave at the same minute. I'm not happy to have done that, but I've done that at several times. You need to set an example, and you need to ensure that HR takes that decision, not an IC or a legal person, but you need to let HR know, why do you want to make them resign and go? What are we getting out of it? Right? You have a termination letter which is drafted.
Most of the time, there are lack of proofs here in such cases.
In cases where the evidence is not correct, and then you would offer them to resign, I am totally fine with that, as long as they're not part of this organization, and as long as we are not conveying the message, because unless and until you have total evidence, you cannot, having said all that, you should also look at it from the other side, right?
Correct.
I think Kanishka was mentioning about that. You cannot allow an innocent person to be, pinned to the wall. That cannot happen at all. You need to be very, very mindful of the fact that there are women, there are men in the organization who would raise complaints against the best of people just to get back at something. The reason might be something totally different. You need to have resources to go deep into any problem that you face. And only if you're 100% sure, like how Aparna was mentioning, if you have your proofs, if you have your, statements, if you have corroboration done properly, thoroughly, and you have it checked from an evidence point of view, then you can take such termination action.
Dharani, just taking Smita's point, also organization do not have a lot of audacity or the strength to stand up and say, I fire you or I terminate you. All right.
I think it's just up to the organization, Smita.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I think as an organization, as a country, we have, for some reasons, we have avoided terminating the person. We also look at the softer aspect.
Yep.
Definitely, it is totally an Indian thing. It is a very Indian mentality. I respect that. I am with all of that. Like how Smita was mentioning. What do we do if we don't have evidence properly done, but we know that this person wants to leave because he's guilty, and we want to let go. The separation should happen. Then in those circumstances, it is fine to just allow the resignation to happen. But I would say, in terms of sexual harassment, the definition of 375 IPC is changed. Even that should be mentioned. Even molestation is amounting to rape. You cannot just let these sexual predators roam around freely. If possible, we should motivate these victims to go and file a complaint in the police station as well. I think that is the next level that we should be talking about. Termination is a very, very small thing. We should not, जैसे हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना, झिझकना नहीं चाहिए, मिलना ही चाहिए. मतलब termination is the least that you can do. कोई शंका नहीं रखना चाहिए.
In some of the cases where the company decided that we will only let them go, the company, there was a decision that we will not offer, while they did not want to, the IC per se and the company did not want to go the termination route for various reasons. But what we did is that asking them to leave, but we say that the company will not give background verification, will not answer background verification calls. That's a stand that many of the ICs I've been part of has taken. It's the least that they could do. They were not happy about not terminating, but at the same time they could not take that decision. But the least that they recommended is that one is no rehire, and the other one is saying that we will not answer any background verification calls. That makes it a question mark if the person is trying to join a multinational, a professional multinational would want a background verification, and there will be a question mark there. So that's the least that they could do. I'm sure, I know it's not the solution per se to whatever we are discussing, but
it's a very good point, Aparna. I think we should do it. What I suggest is, have it as a part of your policy. Whenever an employee is terminated or separated because of disciplinary grounds, that letter and that case should go into the personal files and be brought up at each appraisal if they are still continuing in the organization. Otherwise, the talent attraction team or the recruiter team should be handed this and say, no rehire. And when a background verification comes, please let them know that there was a disciplinary proceeding. We can't give you details, but yes, there was a disciplinary action taken. And that's the first step to take.
Question, and I want to ask you a tricky case that I had faced.
Yes, Smita.
Okay, so without naming the organization, the HR head of an organization called me and said that I was interviewing a person for a very critical position. He has passed all the levels. While in HR round, he mentioned that he was terminated from the earlier organization for sexual harassment. Wow. He's a great fit, great guy. I want to hire him, but I am not confident. So I want to hear from you. What should I do? So what is each of one? I want to hear from you. What would be your recommendation?
I am really, really surprised that somebody really wants to ask if they want to hire. I would keep that person away from my friends, family, corporate, company, everything forever. It's a worm in the brain. This sexual harassment predators, it's a worm in the brain, Smita and everybody here. It's it's something which needs treatment psychologically. You know, you cannot imagine somebody as an object. Once you start objectifying an entire gender, you cannot have that person join an organization. I give this example when I conduct these sessions. You know, I tell all the men, especially the men in the room, I tell them, you know, what would you do if a big bowl of rasagullas and rashmalai is kept in front of you? You know, and everybody's mouth starts watering. They say, you know, yeah, we'll, please don't start, you know, stop looking at women like that. From the time they move out of their house till they, you know, come back to the house, thousands of eyes are prying. And if your own colleague has the guts, you know, has the, you know, perversion to actually act on his, you know, thoughts, you wouldn't want somebody like that anywhere close to friends, family, or your company. No, I mean, strictly no go from my
But
side.
I would just like to add one thing, or rather ask that a person having guts to admit it in their HR round that they have been terminated because of sexual harassment. I mean, accepting and admitting that, I mean, it's again more from the legal philosophy that, you know, hate the crime and not the criminal. And
yes, so you're absolutely right, Kanishka. But my point is, I was telling what the organization should follow. As a person, you know, organization is not a, you know, it doesn't have a personal opinion. You should have an opinion which is good for the society at large. If somebody has mentioned it in the interview, the reason is not because they are very transparent about it, because they're afraid about it, and they don't have a choice, and they don't care about it. Anybody who cares about it would be never applying for a job and saying, I got terminated for sexual harassment, let me know what to do.
You know, I have, I agree. I completely agree with Dharani. You know, as a person, I made the mistake twice. It was not a sexual harassment case though. You know, I also have my own IoT-based product startup. So when I was hiring for a couple of positions, one was a sales position, the other was a, software engineer position. In both the cases, both of them had a misconduct issue. One was the sales guy was faking his reports, and the other guy, the software guy, also had a misconduct issue. Both of them had, probably they didn't leave because of that, but both of them had those issues. It was very clearly coming out. One said it himself, the other came out during background verification. You know, but they said, you know, I have understood it. I know I shouldn't have done it. And, you know, I'm going through this yoga course now. I'm spending time to cleanse myself. All those things, you know, at that point, I looked at it as a person. And I said, I think he has the guts to come and tell me, which means he is regretting. I should give him an opportunity. Both the times I failed miserably. So in this point, I will completely agree with Dharani, because it is a worm in the head. A person who has done this and gotten away, if he gets an opportunity, a fantastic opportunity again, in spite of having done something like that, he knows that I can do it and get away with it, and I can go convince another person to get into another organization again.
There are statistics to prove that. You're right, Aparna. There are statistics to prove that most sexual predators are repeat offenders.
I'm going to put one more googly. Are we saying that we are going to punish the person repeatedly for one offense?
So we are not punishing them, right? It is not punishing. It is a policy in the organization where we do not hire people who have been, you know, found guilty of sexual harassment. Whether your company has that policy or not, whether your company wants to project that kind of a, you know, standard or not, is up to you. There are a lot of companies, for example, Google says that we will employ people even if you have a criminal background. But there are limitations even in that. So if you want to apply for any job in Google, the first disclaimer which comes is says, even if you have a criminal background, you can approach us. We still will go through you. But you know, if you go into the stats and see how many they have and how many have applied, that's a totally different story. When it comes to sexual harassment, it is a different crime, Smita. It is not. It actually, POSH is one step behind, I would say. You know, any of the acts under POSH, they are not treated as crimes unless you relate it with an act, you know, under the IPC. You have to correlate. Like if somebody is ogling or, you know, stalking you, then you have to go back to an act section in IPC and say, oh, okay, there is this section which falls under it. So then we can file a criminal complaint. You know, directly under the POSH Act, if you do, police won't take any action at all. इसके लिए तो IC के पास जाओ भाई, हम लोग क्या करेंगे, you know. So crimes
There are
is
lots
different.
of questions coming in there,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
3,500 questions. But one important thing before we close and try and answer a few of them, okay, what are those 1, 2, or 3 best practices that you recommend that every organization should do? Okay, if I have to do a rapid fire with each one of you, I feel like Karan Johar now. Yeah.
Yeah, I can go first. So there was a fantastic point that came up in it's a best practice. One of the winners of last year's award functions that's really stayed with me, which because it really resonated with me so much that I had been thinking about it, but they had done it. So it is like a ecosystem that they create. If there is a sensitization can go a long way. You cannot imagine the impact a good training can do. So going with that logic, what they had done is, if there is a case against let's say a senior manager or a particular function, so what they do is they pick up that entire band and they train. Okay, and if there is a case that has happened in a team, they do not allow rumors. They actually face it and they go address the entire team. There is no specifics, there is no names taken, but that team is picked up and then addressed smooth, so that there is no hurt feeling anywhere. There is no room for rumors anymore, and they just pick up that entire band and train, or the team, that entire department if required. That seemed like an amazing thing for me. And picking up managers, they are your strongest and weakest link. If an organization can focus periodically, not just the IC is required to go through frequent skill building. The same way, I feel a best practice would be to also focus on managers on a periodic basis, because in spite of how many hour trainings and promotions you do, people still go to their immediate reporting manager with their issue, unless he himself is he himself is the harasser. Many times that is also true, but most of the time it goes to the manager, then to HR, then comes to IC. So managers are your strongest and weakest link. They should be addressed periodically. Mere level pe handle kar liya is a statement that really scares me. So these are two things that I would recommend.
Smita, there are
Thank you.
There are a lot of things that a lot of organizations can do, Smita, and I agree with what Aparna is mentioning, but I would go back to what Kanishka started off with saying. Still, this is a preventive and prohibitive act. This is not like you cannot become a Sherlock Holmes or a CID or something and start doing everything on your own. The ICs do not have that capability. Nobody gives you that much leeway to go ahead. So the first and foremost thing that every organization should do is have a really good policy. How you draft your internal sexual harassment policy and how you draft your guides or your rules of execution. What do you do? What does the IC do if they find someone guilty? Where do they go? How does the execution happen of the decision? These are things where people don't talk. I think those should be drafted down. Those should be mentioned clearly. And the leadership should be made a part of the IC awareness program. I don't mean they should be included in the IC, but you should start directly from the CEO or the MD or whoever is heading the business, then with all the important leaders who come under that person, and then so it's top-down approach which works mostly. It's not the other way in this. Unless you follow a top-down approach, the results will take a long time. I'm not saying it won't work any other way. I'm saying if you don't do it top-down, it'll take 2 years or 3 years for you to get that kind of awareness. If you do it a top-down, you're able to convince your leaders first. Yes. I think it'll trickle down very easily. You have to convince them. Absolutely. There's no other way. There are a lot of leaders, who keep asking, Dharani, why are you doing this? What is the necessity? 2 hours of productive time. My guy might be solving some bugs and all that. Is it really important? I said, you just come and sit with me for 1 hour. If you feel bored, if you feel you don't need to be there, you go away. We also have the responsibility to make it interesting and talk only relevant things. Sometimes people who train on sexual harassment get carried away. We should be, as Aparna was mentioning, we should see that, are they nodding their heads or are they dozing off? We should ensure that there is a response. It's called active listening. You should see that the people who are part of your audience are active listening. That's the only thing I don't like about virtual sessions. Now, I don't know if my audience is looking at me or switching on the television and watching the latest show on Prime on Netflix. So apart from that, I think, we're missing that live audience, especially people like me who feed off the energy of the audience. I think I'm missing that. that is the third thing that I would recommend. Physical sessions with managers, with leadership. So if you have these three things going for you, and a very good IC selection which changes every 3 years, a lot of experience brought in, if they don't have the expertise in house, reach out to organizations like yours, bring in experts to speak about it, have a play, show some videos, throw some stats, send some emailers regularly, keep it in the minds, that there is something like this, keep thinking about it, and I think that serves well.
Absolutely brilliant. Kanishka, from your side, anything, any
I think
closing
just to add, I believe, and especially taking the scenario we are in past 1.5 years, where almost every one of us is having their own mental issues, right? And I don't mean like mental could be like psychiatric, but psychological, ups and downs that all of us are going through. So I think one of the most important thing, and it's more of an umbrella practice which could include sexual harassment, and I think Dharani was also saying that sexual harassment and these sexual offenses are to do with mental issues as well. And these days the problem is we don't have the context, we don't have the body language, we don't have the facial expressions, right, to be able to understand what is happening and what is the intent of the other person. So the intent versus impact is something that is very difficult to understand in these specific situations. So I believe one thing is test the people with respect to the knowledge. We Indians love giving exams. So once we've gone through a training session, we should have a small MCQ, right? Every 4 months, every quarter, where we can that recall value is there. So that, and I mean there are organizations who are doing it, that every quarter you have to give the sexual harassment MCQ test, and if you fail then you have to again attend it. So the point is the recall value, and also incentivizing people for that. And when I say incentivizing, in the sense, if they're attending the session, they're doing good in that session, then it should be shown that this guy or this person, this employee is doing very good in it.
Very good. No, Kanishka, what I would recommend is when I conduct a session, I have at least 50 or 60 5-stars with me. Anybody who answers the question gets that. It is very small, but we are all humans. The joy that gives me, if somebody gives me a 5-star when I'm answering a question, I'm 40-year-old, I'm a lawyer with 17 years experience, but still, I would love it, right? We all would. So I think what you mentioned is absolutely right. It goes a long way.
Thank you so much. I think there are loads of questions. I don't know, I've not been able to check, but
she had put up her hand a long time back. Maybe we should start with Jayanti. Jayanti, she put up her hand long back. It has been up there.
Jayanti, you want to ask anything, or any of you want to unmute or ask?
There were a couple of questions, Smita, which I said I'll answer when the Q&A starts.
Yeah.
Harish and Lavanya had them. One was about, what would you do about, I think, whistleblower policy or something, Harish?
Could you
whistleblower.
On whistleblower protection? Harish is asking that.
What was the exact question? Can you show something? Okay, so whistleblower protection is not like how you see in the movies, Harish. It's not like, you set up a separate office for them and stuff like that. No, it is very simple that you need to keep it confidential. If anybody comes as a witness to the IC, you need to assure them that nothing will happen to their job. Trust me, it's not easy. Aparna, Kanishka, Smita will tell the same. It is not easy to get witnesses to come and talk openly because they're all afraid that something will happen to them. Whistleblower policy and retaliation policy needs to be a part of the awareness session that you talk about. When you talk about POSH, let them know that, if somebody comes with a complaint or somebody has, decided to come forward as a witness, your identity can be kept anonymous until the law requires us to reveal it. And we will keep it confidential with us. We will not reveal it unless it's absolutely necessary. And you need to actually stand by your words. That is really tough. I'm telling you, there'll be all kinds of pressure, like Smita was mentioning. The lawyers, it's my own fraternity, but the lawyers, the HR heads, they'll be on you. They'll be like, yeah, it's okay. You tell us the name. It's okay. Who's that witness? On a coffee, on lunch. So you need to be really careful. Whistleblower protection is all that. And, if in case somebody comes to you and says, because I've been a witness here, my boss is troubling me, you need to take it up as an investigation. Go ahead with your own, the organizational disciplinary inquiry, and, see to it that some justice is done there as well. That would put you in good light.
Super. Thank you. I have Lavanya's question. She's saying,
Yes.
because of the virtual working mode, are there any best practices of conducting awareness on the subject?
Well, virtual mode has reduced the caseload for most external members, is what I'm
Please
hearing.
don't say that.
No, no, not at all.
Had 55 cases across 140 organizations that we serve, okay, in last 1 year. All right. So no cases have not reduced. Virtual harassment is, so I'm happy it is getting reported.
That's a good part. So what I would suggest is COVID has opened all our eyes, So we should go back, modify our policies a little bit and say, make them a little exhaustive. What Kanishka was mentioning is absolutely true. The Act says something, but nobody's asking you to stop there. Like gratuity. The Act says you give it after 4 years and 190 days. But, you can go ahead and, give it even after 2 years. There are organizations who do that. The diamond merchant in Surat, he gives gratuity after 1 year. It's up to you how you want to do it. Similarly with POSH as well, include it, in your examples. Tell them that, even if you are chatting and telling the person, no, what are you doing so late in the night? Shall we have a video chat? Why don't you switch on your video? Please switch on, switch on, switch on, switch on. Every day, pestering things, talking about their physical appearance on a video call. It's absolutely, rubbish to allow that to happen. So
yeah.
Definitely
So
include those examples.
Adding to what you just said, what we did at KelpHR, and this we really kind of experimented with one organization who was ready to get it experimented. Okay, we brought in actors. We brought in actors to act out on webinar mode, and
Awesome.
it was a super hit solution, because they were, organizations were not ready to do classroom or story based that we conduct. They said, tell us something new. So we bought a group of actors who actually acted it out, and the 5-6 lessons that you all heard from Dharani, Aparna and Kanishka, we relayed it through performances. Okay, what happened is suddenly all the cameras started coming on and people started asking questions. So webinar, web-based methods we have done, which is working beautifully. Another very important thing, I know that you and wouldn't agree to it, but we also did something which is called a game-based, to bring in some important aspect. Not everything, of course, nobody can replace classroom session or a one-to-one conversation. But touching on millennials, we are in the world of Byju's and Vedanta.
You're right, Smita. We should do that. In a virtual world, how do I connect with my audience? I repeat during my workshop sessions, either me or Aparna Ralegaonkar, not Aparna GV. She takes some of our sessions right now. I'm encouraging her to do it herself from the past 6 months. It is so difficult to ask them to switch on their videos. It is almost an impossible task. And as you are saying, if there's a game or some kind of a virtual mode where you can engage them, know that okay, there is some feedback, we need that response. I think kudos to that. I mean, I'm all for that. It's a very good initiative.
Sure. So just moving to next question, that is from Jayanti. In cases where the victim is not ready to file the complaint with IC, and if the organization has all the information about the alleged section.
Yeah, we go the code of conduct method. I think we already discussed that. Yeah. Something about this protecting victim for 5 years, Yashoda. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that, your question? Yashoda?
So I will.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, we have certain deadlines that has been mentioned when it comes to POSH, right? Like within 3 months, the complaint should be raised and all those deadlines. So in that deadline, we also have that victim should be given protection for 5 years from the time the judgment is announced. So how do we ensure this?
Anybody else wants to answer, or shall I go ahead? Okay, so basically protection boleto, it's not like a physical protection, Yashoda. I'm sure you understand that. What it means is, in case I was talking about retaliation, right? What generally happens is, if there is a victim, and because of the victim, if some senior person has left the organization, there will be a lot of unspoken retaliation. People would shun her out of the party modes, they would not take her out on lunches, promotions would become lesser. You need to keep a track of what's happening with the victim and their appraisals regularly. You need to tie up with HR and see what is happening. And you can always have a chat with that person once in 6 months. just to see how she is doing, what is happening. And if there is something, you need to inform the head HR to ensure that this lady is not harassed again, not sexually,
Okay.
but just because she's a victim, you cannot alienate her and make it very tough for her in the organization that she resigns and goes. I've seen so many people do that. They've had no opportunity but to resign and go. So you should actively participate with HR on that.
Wonderful. But what if, I mean, are there chances that the person who was fired out because of this harassment issue, will he come back and harm this girl somewhere outside the office?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Yashoda, you mentioned. We have nothing to do with it. If I'm a lawyer for PEGA, I can only support what they do in their work hours, and whatever happens with them outside the organization, if they approach us as a company, we should talk to the police and let them provide the protection that they need. Otherwise, organizations do not have the capability to even counsel them on it. I would fail to counsel as a legal head whatever that employee is going through, because I am not a criminal lawyer.
Okay. I had a few suggestions that we should get sign from the complainant that he'll not harm the girl.
Won't help.
Okay.
and you cannot self-incrimination, right? That won't work as well later in a court of law. All you need to do is encourage the employee to talk to their family. The family should be, somebody in the family should know about it. And if it is getting serious, we should ask them to connect with the police. Your facilities head or your head HR or your legal head will have connect with the police department, the Cyberabad Security Council, or so on and so forth in Hyderabad. So similarly, each town, each city has their chief police force. Get in touch with them, arrange for a counseling session, and that is where your responsibility ends. In fact, you're going a step beyond your responsibility when you're doing this as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dharani.
You're welcome.
That's helpful.
So
Sandhya also has the same question, actually.
Yeah, 5-year thing. I think Menaka Gandhi had sent it to a few government officials that every woman needs to be protected for at least 5 years from the time she's made a complaint against any form of retaliation. I don't think there is any case law, any ruling around it. Yeah.
We need to always protect them. I would say not 5 years. We should always protect such people who have been victims before. Just have those conversations, and at a later date, probably get such people onto the ICC, encourage them to see how they can ensure that others don't suffer what they've gone through.
Absolutely. So there is a question from Archana. She's saying, what about the victim who's applying elsewhere? Mentioned that she has filed a complaint against.
I've answered that, I think, Smita. So what you should do is, if somebody discriminates against you just because you are a woman who has suffered sexual harassment, let me know. I would get you the best lawyers in India, not just Hyderabad. Let us ensure that that company doesn't, is not allowed to go like that. You cannot discriminate against victims. It is huge.
So I think we have answered most of the questions. The comments, amazing comments. I'm so happy and glad we are doing this. All right.
Yeah. I must mention this, it shouldn't sound cliche, but thank you for inviting 2 lawyers onto this panel, Smita. I appreciate what Kanishka has done as well. I think people tend to have only one mindset about lawyers. It's a very, very important point to mention here. Even during the entire COVID, lawyer community was the only community which didn't receive support from any government across the world. Every other community received support. I think that mentality about lawyers should change, and organizations like yours are taking the step forward to ensure that there are lawyers like Kanishka and Dharani who are not wearing, that kind of a image which they have of lawyers who are liars, or, lawyers generally, do things only for their own interest. That, I think that is not the case. We have come a long way. There are a lot of people who are very supportive. So I would encourage you guys to involve the lawyers wherever they are, and not every lawyer can do this. So who have that bent of mind, who have that experience and want to do it, please include them in your discussions and in your cases.
Absolutely. This is Indian Lawyers Association. I cannot escape lawyers. HR and Indian Lawyers Association have tied up together.
Wonderful initiative.
Yeah, bring this initiative, and it's also a way of giving back to the society. As I mentioned earlier, the idea is we have so much of knowledge, all this today. It's an excellent session. Thank you very much for bringing in so much of perspective, because there are something which is written in black. There are some things which are just not written. So we're trying to find the grays here and understand and make sense out of it. Any closing comments from Aparna, Kanishka, Dharani, please, or otherwise we close the session.
Okay, so my closing comment would be to say that, you know, in an environment, in a workplace, if somebody is being sexually harassed, all of us are victims. Okay, that is something, if all of us can, if as professionals, if we can carry that with us, if that thought can be ingrained, I think a lot of progress can be made in terms of creating a safe and secure work environment. That is one thing, definitely. The other one is, I wanted to say, for ICs, if there are IC members here, then following the hot stove principle is very, very important, because you know, hot stove is like, if there is a hot stove in front of you, irrespective of who you are, if you touch it, you're going to get burnt, and it is immediate and it is visible. You know, that is how an IC should function, because that is, if you can act like that, you know, people will get to know, and that is how the confidence on you will get built, and that is when people will approach you. That's very, very important according to me. So these are two things that I wanted to give as in my thoughts.
Thank you so much, Aparna.
Kanishka, I'd really like to listen to what you want to say as a closing comment. As somebody who's so young and achieved so much, what do you think should be the future?
My only so looking at the genesis of this law, like 1997 Vishaka guidelines came in, 2010 the bill came in. Nirbhaya had to happen for this to come into effect, this you know, this Sexual Harassment Act. So my only thing is that the only closing comment that I really have is, there is nothing stigmatizing about it.
Yep.
It's not us.
True.
It's not like us versus them or something like that. My only point is, we have to think about both the parties, the victim as well as the respondent, and make sure that people do not turn into respondents. And we as a society do not wait for another joker to evolve, you know, and take care of it.
True. And I would continue with what Aparna and Kanishka said, and go a step further and say, I don't know if you all know this, but the Indian sexual harassment law is most advanced on the planet. Coming from somebody who actually deals with all employment issues across the globe and has gone through what the others do, there are more gray areas in US and European law and Australian law than there are in India.
Okay.
The only difference is the character of the companies there is more victim friendly. Let us change our character also towards that. We don't need any more laws. We just need the people to change their mindset.
Correct.
And, you know, come forward, collaborate more, and ensure that, you know, no woman should stop coming to the office for such silly reasons, for somebody else's mistake. Simple as that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Smita. Wonderful to be a part.
Thank you so much, and bang on. Actually, I train people from US, UK, and Singapore on Indian law.
Yes.
And I can see their faces when they look at our law, and you know, I tell them what it is. Like, it's so exhaustive. And I have reviewed US, UK, and Singapore laws, which is not at all like, they just like a plain simple code of conduct. So pretty impressed with the amount of work which has gone in building this law. Now we as champions of it have to take it forward, take the baton forward. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you very much. It was a great learning experience for me, and I'm so amazed with the active part. So though they were not on camera, I know each one of them have had great takeaways today. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much, Smita. Thanks to Kanishka and Dharani for the wonderful participation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Same, yeah. Thank you so much.